That Saturday night was the most intense and unforgettable night of my life. The house was so quiet and peaceful that I felt a rare sense of calm. I was exhausted from a long week and just wanted to sleep. As I lay down, I thought nothing could disturb the quiet of the night. I had been a single mother for 12 years since my divorce. My ex-husband and I didn't have a bad relationship, we just grew apart. Raising my son Marcus alone was the most rewarding and challenging thing I had ever done. He was everything to me, smart, funny, and kind, but it was hard being both his mother and father. That night, I was so tired that I barely had the energy to put on my pajamas before falling into bed. The house was silent. Marcus had gone to bed hours earlier after playing video games and doing his homework. Finally, I had a moment to myself. In my room, the moon shone through the thin curtains, casting soft shadows on the walls. I snuggled under the blanket, enjoying the warmth and letting my mind wander. Life had been calm lately, which was a nice change after a difficult year. Marcus and I had been through a lot together since his father left, but we had built a good life together. Even though Marcus was almost 20 now, we were still very close. He was always a caring and thoughtful person. Sometimes I worried that he took on too much responsibility for someone his age. I smiled as I thought about him. He was so kind, and I felt lucky to have him in my life. But tonight, I was too tired to think. I felt heavy and sleepy. Then, I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. I woke up a little, thinking it was part of a dream, but the knock came again, gently, and I was fully awake. "Mom." Marcus's voice was quiet, but it was enough to wake me up. I blinked, trying to focus on the door. I could see Marcus's outline in the dim light coming from the hallway. I sat up, trying to wake myself completely. "Marcus, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice still sleepy. He paused before coming into the room and closing the door quietly behind him. He seemed unsure about coming in. I couldn't sleep," he said, looking down as he stood near my bed. I felt worried because I could tell something was bothering him. Since the divorce, Marcus sometimes had trouble sleeping, but he rarely talked about it. I knew his father leaving had hurt him more than he showed, and tonight, I could see the sadness in his eyes. "Come here," I said softly, patting the empty space next to me on the bed. "You can stay with me tonight if you want." He hesitated for a moment, then came over and lay down beside me. He was on his side, facing me, and I could see how tired he looked in the dim light. He also seemed vulnerable, which was unusual for him. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked gently. Marcus shook his head, his dark hair falling over his eyes. "No. I just wanted to be close to you." My heart felt warm. It had been a while since Marcus had wanted to be close to me like this, like when he was younger. I reached out and brushed his hair away from his forehead, smiling at him. "That's okay," I whispered, putting my hand on his shoulder. "You can stay as long as you need." He smiled back, but I could still see something bothering him, something he didn't want to talk about. I didn't ask him about it. Instead, I lay back down, pulled the blanket over us both, and let the quietness comfort us. We lay there for a while, enjoying the peacefulness. Marcus's breathing slowed down, and I thought he had fallen asleep. But then he spoke again, so softly I almost couldn't hear him. "Mom, do you ever miss him?" His question surprised me, but I knew he was talking about his father. It was a question I had avoided for years, one I didn't know how to answer. "I do sometimes," I admitted quietly. "But things weren't good between us, Marcus. You know that." He nodded, but I could tell he wanted to know more. "Do you ever think things could have been different?" he asked. I sighed, thinking about past regrets. "Maybe. But we can't change what happened. We have to move forward." Marcus looked down, playing with the edge of the blanket. "I guess I just wonder if maybe I could have done something different, like if I had been better." His words hurt my heart. I sat up and turned to face him. "Marcus, no. This wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong," I said seriously. He looked away, his voice a whisper. "Sometimes it feels like if I had been better, maybe Dad wouldn't have left." Tears came to my eyes, and I hugged him tightly. He resisted for a second, but then he hugged me back, burying his face in my shoulder. "Marcus, listen to me," I said, my voice shaking. "Your dad made his own choices. It had nothing to do with you. It was his decision, and it was never your responsibility. You've always been more than enough for me, Marcus," I whispered, my voice filled with love and reassurance. "You're everything to me." He nodded against my shoulder, but I could still sense the tension within him, the weight of years of unspoken pain and guilt. We held each other closely, the silence between us a comforting balm. Gradually, his body relaxed, his breathing deepening as he drifted off to sleep. But as he slumbered peacefully beside me, my mind raced, thoughts and memories swirling in the darkness. We had both endured so much. Yet, amidst the quiet comfort of that shared embrace, an unexpected feeling stirred within me, a sensation I couldn't quite name. It was a warmth that spread through my chest, a connection that felt deeper, more intimate than the usual bond between a mother and her son. I tried to dismiss it, to focus on the rhythm of his breathing, but the feeling persisted, a persistent whisper that refused to be ignored. Morning arrived too soon, the soft light of dawn painting the room in gentle hues. Marcus slept soundly beside me, his face peaceful and relaxed, the tension of the previous night seemingly forgotten. I watched him for a moment, my heart swelling with love and pride. Yet, that unfamiliar feeling lingered, a persistent undercurrent beneath the surface of my maternal affection. I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb him, and made my way downstairs to prepare breakfast. The familiar routine of cooking offered a sense of normalcy, but my thoughts kept returning to our late-night conversation. Marcus had always been sensitive, but I hadn't realized the extent to which he had internalized his father's absence. The guilt he carried weighed heavily on my heart, a burden I wished I could alleviate. But it wasn't just the realization that lingered in my mind. It was the way he had looked at me, the vulnerability in his eyes, the unspoken longing for something more. And if I was honest with myself, the warmth I had felt while holding him had stirred something deep within me, a connection that transcended the boundaries of our familial roles. I tried to push the thought away, reminding myself that he was my son. But the feeling lingered, a persistent whisper that refused to be silenced. I felt truly alive. There was no confusion, no guilt, just the pure, undeniable truth of our love. It was a love born from years of shared experiences, of trust and understanding that ran deeper than blood. It was a love that felt as natural as breathing, as inevitable as the sunrise. We lay there in the aftermath of our shared passion, the silence punctuated only by the soft rhythm of our breaths. Marcus finally pulled back, his eyes searching mine with a warmth that melted my heart. "Are we okay?" he asked, his voice a gentle caress in the darkness. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment, my heart overflowing with emotions that defied words. "Yeah," I whispered, my voice thick with unspoken truths. "We're okay." Later that night, after the remnants of dinner were cleared away and the house settled into a peaceful quietude, Marcus and I found ourselves on the back porch, enveloped by the tranquility of the night. The air was crisp and cool, the stars twinkling like diamonds scattered across the vast canvas of the sky. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of release, a lifting of the weight that had been pressing down on me. We didn't speak much, but words were unnecessary. Simply being near him, sharing the quiet beauty of the night, was enough. There was no urgency, no pressure, just a comfortable silence that spoke volumes. Whatever this was between us, it was unfolding organically, and I was content to let it blossom at its own pace. He reached for my hand, his touch sending a warmth that spread through me like wildfire. I smiled, squeezing his hand gently, and we sat there, fingers intertwined, bathed in the soft glow of the starlight. It was a love that defied definition, a connection that transcended the boundaries of our familial roles. And in that moment, under the vast expanse of the night sky, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. As the days transitioned into weeks, the intimacy between us deepened, weaving its way into the fabric of our daily lives. We didn't need to label it, to define it. It simply was. It was in the way our eyes met, in the lingering touches, in the quiet moments we shared, creating a world that belonged only to us. With each passing day, the connection between us grew stronger, more tangible. The conflict I had initially felt dissolved, replaced by a sense of rightness, a feeling that this was where I was meant to be. Marcus was no longer just my son, he was my partner, my confidant, my lover. Our relationship had blossomed into something beautiful, something that fulfilled a need we hadn't even known we had. It wasn't until a rainy afternoon in late autumn that the full realization of our love washed over me. The sky was a canvas of stormy grays, the rain drumming a steady rhythm against the windows. Marcus and I were curled up on the couch in the living room, a fire crackling in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room. We were wrapped in a blanket, the warmth of the fire and the intimacy of our closeness creating a haven from the storm outside. Marcus, 23 years old, was leaning against me, his head resting on my shoulder, and I absently ran my fingers through his hair, savoring the quiet intimacy of the moment. The rain-streaked windows blurred the outside world, creating a sense of seclusion, of being in our own little universe. I could feel his breathing, slow and steady, and I knew without a word spoken that he was feeling the same shift in our connection, the same undeniable pull toward something more profound. He lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine, and in that moment, the truth of our love resonated between us. It wasn't just love. It was a bond that transcended the traditional roles we had played, a connection that had evolved into something deeper, something undeniable. "Mom," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue, knowing that whatever he was about to say would change everything. "I love you," he confessed, his hand reaching out to take mine. "Not just because you're my mom, but because of who you are, everything about you. And I don't know if that's okay or if it's wrong, but I can't help it." His words washed over me like a warm wave, filling the room with a love that made my heart ache in the most beautiful way. I had sensed his feelings, but hearing him voice them, acknowledging the depth of his emotions, made it all the more real. I squeezed his hand, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my fingertips. "Marcus," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "I love you too. I've always loved you, but this is different." He nodded, his eyes searching mine for reassurance, for an answer to the unspoken question that hung between us. "I don't know what this means," I continued, "but I know that I feel the same way, and it doesn't feel wrong to me. It feels right." A soft smile touched his lips, and my heart swelled with a joy I had never known before. "I'm glad you feel that way," he whispered, "because I don't know what I'd do if you didn't." I reached up, caressing his cheek, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingertips. "We'll figure this out," I reassured him. Together, we sat in silence for a moment, our gazes locked, the only sounds the gentle patter of rain and the crackling of the fire. Words were unnecessary. We had already said everything that needed to be said. We both knew what we felt, and we both knew that it was real, undeniable. Slowly, Marcus leaned in, his eyes never leaving mine, and gently, hesitantly, he kissed me. It was a soft, tender kiss, filled with all the love and longing we had been holding back for so long. There was no urgency, no rush, just a pure expression of our deep connection. When he pulled back, his eyes were filled with emotion, and I knew that we had crossed a threshold, a point of no return. But instead of fear, I felt a sense of peace, a certainty that this was where we were meant to be. He pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around me, and we held each other as the rain continued to fall, the fire casting a warm glow over our embrace. In that moment, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The rest of the evening was a blur of soft touches, whispered conversations, and gentle kisses. We didn't discuss the future or the implications of our newfound love. All that mattered was the present, the shared intimacy of that moment. As the rain continued its gentle serenade, I marveled at how quickly our relationship had transformed. Marcus had grown from a boy into a man, and in doing so, our bond had evolved into something unexpected, something beautiful, something that fit us perfectly. That night, Marcus came to my room again, but this time, there was no hesitation. He climbed into bed beside me, his arms wrapping around me, holding me close. It wasn't the comforting embrace of a mother and son, it was the embrace of lovers, equals, two souls intertwined. I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, a symphony of love and contentment. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years, a completeness I hadn't known I was missing. Whatever this was, whatever it had become, I was ready for it. Marcus and I had always been close, but now we were something more, something that defied definition. We were partners, lovers, two souls bound by a love that transcended the boundaries of convention. As I drifted off to sleep, a smile curved my lips. It was crazy, I knew, but it felt amazing.